Let's start. Hello, everyone. This is FideMaster Victor Newstroyer. Welcome to our workshop. Today, the topic of our workshop is the king activity from liability to weapon. And we are going to analyze 4 game fragments. Okay, so people are joining. That's great. And so we are going to analyze 4 games today. This is not the first to start with. There will be another one. But you probably know that depends on the stage of the game. The king can be weak, average, and strong. In the end game, we are trying to activate the king, of course. However, in the opening and the middle game, our first priority is the king's safety. So when there are many pieces on the board, for example, in the middle game, the king is the most vulnerable piece, and that's why we need to put it to the safe place. We need to move it to, we need to castle, we need to secure the king's position to avoid problems. What else? If, for example, our opponent castled his king, but made his king's position weak, then we may attack him. So this is how the king is important, and this is how the king is a liability, so the object or the target of our attack. Sometimes, even in the middle game, your king may participate in the attack of the enemy king. Usually it happens in the end game, but sometimes in the end game. And this game, the game between Nigel Short and Jan Timman, is a good example where the king supported the attack in the middle game. In the end game, the king is really strong, and when with fewer pieces on the board, the king as strong as rook. And if you see that your king is centralized, you better prefer trading pieces, because when there are fewer pieces on the board, the king is even stronger. And once your king gets to the center, he can do much more than your opponent's king. Okay. So fine, we're gonna start, but this is not our first example. Let me upload a new one. Actually, no, this is our first one, Sveshnikov versus Brownie. So what can you say about this position? This position is completely open. White has a bishop pair, which is great. But what's the winning plan for white? Is it enough to let white to fight for a win, or maybe white should agree to a draw in this position? Well, with a bishop pair, it seems the white should be winning. At least white should be playing for a win, but which exact plan to choose? And what black gonna do to prevent white from winning? So here we have queenside majority. We can create a pass pawn potentially, but there will be pins on the c-file. Restrict the knight activity with g3 and f4. I mean, g3 first and then f4. Okay, yes, John, it makes sense. So we can trade the bishops and play the knight, bishop, the light squared bishop versus knight. Makes sense, I agree, but you have a bishop pair, and the bishop pair is strong when 2 bishops are together, so it even can compensate the pawn loss. But if you trade x squared bishop, don't you think that you decrease your advantage? Probably you do. Trade rooks. Oh, trade rooks makes sense. Well, actually, trading rooks makes sense. But I think that you won't come up with a winning plan. Okay, so I can give you a hint. The topic is the king's activity. So the white's king's activity actually decides the game. If not the white's king on c2, white is not winning. If, let's say, this king was on g1, it would be a drawish position. No, with bishop versus knight, it's not winning. It's just better.
We can try to centralize the king. and then trade.
So centralize the king and then trade. Okay. How? I'm sorry, but can you hear this background noise? It's great if not, but well, it's a festival here in
Sounds
Valencia.
fine here.
Okay,
Sounds fine.
thank you. Because it's like a festival, and because of that, everybody is celebrating, and well, it's so noisy outside, but luckily you don't hear it. Perfect. So B4 is also a suggestion. David suggested to centralize the king. David, well, I'm sure you don't mean that you didn't mean that the king should go to E4. You probably meant something else with the king. But can you please specify where would you like to see this king? Okay, so John suggests bishop d4, bishop f1, and then centralize the king. But it means the king goes to e4. I don't think it's promising. G3 f4, G3 f4 is a fine plan. Yes, we did talk about it. Okay, I can give you a hint. I'll play the first move and you tell me the plan. What do you think? What's the plan of white? Uh-huh. Bringing the king to b6 and take the b7 pawn. That's right. So, well, you see, white in this position understands that with their king coming to the queen side, they don't create any danger. It's impossible to deliver checkmate. Moreover, there are bishops covering important squares, so the king won't get into trouble once he travels to b6. And once the king gets to b6, they really have to take care about the b7 pawn. Let me show how it works. So rook c8, bishop h5 now. Why this move was played? I'm sure you see it. This move creates a discovered attack. Bishop g5, rook takes e5. So that's a tempo move. It also puts pressure on f7, which means that this king cannot move too far from the f7 pawn. Well, the best way to fight was knight c4, bishop c1, and b5, supporting it. Now it's hard for the king. It's impossible to get to a5, at least not now. Probably bishop e2, then let's say they just defend with h6, and if bishop takes, it's rook takes. And again, this king doesn't pass through the through this wall, through the attack of the rook, and doesn't take the pawn on a6. That was the best way to play.
But what if you can play king b4 and then push b3 to kick the knight, and then can you go to a5 maybe?
Yeah, it's possible, but then you should be very accurate to not get checkmated. So, for example, in this position, if they play this move and you play b3, bishop d6 is checkmate. So, with king b4, you take extra risk. I'm talking about this position. So luckily for white, black here played knight d3, which I'm sure is an attractive move, and I believe that the vast majority of chess players would play this exact move because this is a tempo, and the knight then goes to c5, which is another tempo move. So rook d1, knight goes to c5, black thinks they improve their position, but in fact they allow white to progress and make the knight the object of the attack. Knight goes to e4. King a5, white doesn't care much about anything going on the board, but it wants to bring the king to the enemy territory. Knight d6, king b6. Well, the b7 is protected, but the king is in the enemy territory. You may think that after that there is a mate in net, but no. Something like that means that the king can capture on b7. That's why a check with this knight is impossible. Moreover, white is about to bring the rook, to bring the bishop back, attack the rook, and take on b7 at a certain moment. Not immediately. You'll see it. So was Sveshnikov a strong player? For sure. He even invented Sveshnikov variation of Sicilian defense. International master? No, he was quite a strong grandmaster. He was, well, if I'm not mistaken, he was in the top 10 for for a long period. No, he's a legend. He was a legend. He died actually. Okay, fine. So rook c7. Rook c7, and the bishop comes to b6. What else? I don't think knight c8 is a threat. Well, but maybe king b8, bishop e5 can be a problem potentially. So that's why it is required to gain this tempo. So if now knight c8, let's say, then yes, king here. So bishop cannot go there. The rook is hanging twice. Now the rook has to move, and if the rook goes to d7, we trade, and the b7 pawn falls. If the rook goes to c6, then the b7 pawn falls instantly. That's why they didn't deliver such a check. Same thing with knight to b5. That's why rook goes to either d7 or c6. So if rook d7, what do you think? How exactly you can play for a win in this position? I'm sure you can think and come up with a plan. Okay, so yes, the son of Evgeny Sveshnikov is only FIDE master or only international master. Yes, so he actually created a new version of chess, and he wants to make it more popular, but I don't think that he succeeded with it. Yeah, dice chess, yeah, thanks. Okay, so how should we play? Yes, bishop c5 for sure, and then they lose this pawn. So here you may say that, well, okay, even if we win the pawn, we have to play the endgame with bishops of opposite color, right? But the a pawn is likely to fall too. For example, this, don't rush, a4, a5. So let's fix the weaknesses, and then we're gonna take them. King d8, okay, what now? Taking, well, but then they take with a bishop. So bishop b6 instead, king c8 and king a8. And then what is our plan? To go there, it looks like a Zogzwan. Yeah, 3 versus 1 also can be converted. So bishop goes there, and then I think that c4, b3, c4, c5. Because b3, bishop takes, there will be a pin. Also, maybe just this, capturing, bringing the bishop here and taking on b7 after that may guarantee a win. Okay, so rook d7 wasn't played. Instead, rook c6. At least it stops bishop c5. What is the simplest way to make the position completely winning for white? What do you think? This is where Sveshnikov didn't do his best. He made a mistake, but he could do what? b4, then bishop c5. But okay, b4, bishop takes here, bishop c5, but bishop e5. So maybe it's not winning. Yes, you can take the b7 pawn. So you take there. Let's say they take with a rook. Then what? Rook takes, bishop takes. If you take on b7, they take there. And this maybe not winning. I don't know. Still looks like winning because of the outside pawn. What do you think? Okay. So, but instead of doing b4, you can already do what? Yeah, we have a passed pawn, but it's may with bishops of opposite color, it may not be a win. Okay, actually, let's go over it. If you think that it deserves our attention, let's go over it. So rook takes, bishop takes. So king b7, bishop b4, king goes there, and then what to play?
This should be a draw.
Bishop a3, actually. I think
I
it
don't
is a
see
draw, yes. Bishop a3, the pawn is stopped, so it cannot go to a7 quickly. Okay, fine. So let's go back. Instead, it was bishop a5 played, but that wasn't a good move. White could win the game with a tactical strike right away. What do you think? Which tactical strike I'm talking about? So bishop a2, c4, and then what? I'm taking here. So Brian, you can take on d6 right away. If you want to take this knight, let's take it. How does it work? Obviously, if they do this, this is losing. So king d7, we take, they take, king b7, and well, this is where we have two passed pawns. Because of that, we are very likely to win. So this, and they also lose on f7. So bishop d8, bishop f7. This is absolutely winning with two extra pawns. After rook d6, they can take with the king. And with the king, it's winning too. So we almost trap the rook, but even if not, we have three passed pawns after we take this one on a6. This is a winning position too. Well, maybe Sveshnikov was low on time, maybe he didn't evaluate it properly, but he just played bishop a5. However, this move is still good. Bishop f5, bishop f3, taking the rook moves, and finally he does that. The rook goes back. The knight is still pinned. How to continue in this position? What do you think?
You can maybe take the knight on d6 with the bishop and then take the pawn on b7 with the bishop.
Yes, I think it makes sense. In the game, it was king b6 first, and then the same idea was applied. Well, so I thought that maybe we should try with c4 here. But c4, bishop here, this trade, c5, and this should be winning, right? Well, we're gonna place this, and then that. So they have to do this, because if they push a5 or so, it's c6, c7, and c8. It's
They
unstoppable.
may have bishop d4 though.
Bishop d4, yes, but bishop d4 means we take there. And there will be two passed pawns. We promote the a pawn then.
True.
So this, then back, and then nothing stops us from playing a7. Yeah. So this is how it becomes winning. So c4 looks winning. This, and then c4 actually would be also fine. Then you threaten to take. So they don't even have time for this because you capture there, they deliver a check, and you capture even there. So it completely fails. So the king wasn't weak. Sveshnikov played rook e1. That's fine. Not the best move, but still something. f6 defending. a4. Why does he play so? He wants to advance it already and maybe fix them on the light squares. King goes to d8. And now, when they are going to deliver a check and win pawns, he has to trade and pass the game to the endgame with bishops of opposite color. So bishop d6, it's rook e6. That's why it's rook takes and king takes b7. So it's only one extra pawn, but because of his ability to convert these three to two passed pawns, white should be completely winning. So rook d2, but then what?
Rook e2.
Rook e2. Oh, David, can you repeat?
No, I said rook e2.
Rook d1 is also a possibility, and it even allows you to trade faster. So rook takes, then a5, king b6, and they save it. But this is absolutely losing because you can continue with b4 and create two plus pawns. Well, the rest of the game isn't interesting for us. So bishop f4, king b7. So some prophylaxis was played first. And finally, it was b4. How did I drop my rating? Well, I played one tournament in Buenos Aires and it wasn't successful. I cannot say it was really bad, but it was just one of the tournaments where I was one of the top players, and uh, well, it was really hard to play against young players, and every draw decreased my rating. So I had to win many, many games to not lose rating. So originally, these conditions are not favorable for gaining rating. That's why it was a bit risky to play in such a tournament, but I still decided to choose to play because I wanted to play. Okay, so what now? They can capture on f2, but I think nobody cares. King b7, bishop takes, and then you just promote. Because you control the a7, you can take once, promote one, they sacrifice the bishop, and then you do the same thing with the other pawn. Well, this, bishop f2, and one accurate move was required, after which the game is completely winning.
And you try to do bishop d5, king c6, and then push c4 to, sorry, and then push c4, c5 to block the bishop.
Well, David, if we do so, they can play king c8 and try to blockade the a pawn with king d8 move. So that's why it's better to play bishop e6. Why this move? Because such a move provokes the f pawn move. So f4. And once f4 is played, we can neutralize any activity with our bishop. How? By locating the bishop on f3. So bishop f4 stops a4. Can they play h5? Yes, but then this move, and you can still stop everything. So g4, h takes. They take, that's fine. You take, and then you can stop two pawns. That's fine. Because if they do this, well, all three passed pawns are located. You can be stopped with your bishop being on this diagonal. So if bishop f3, g4, take this, e4, well, then, well, you can stop these two pawns. At least you can do this, provoking a3, and then go back. Just a7, yes, a7 works too. Fine, let's go back. So bishop a6 was an important move. f4, bishop d5, and now you do a7, take, and then do the same thing with the other pawn. This is how it works. So I think that white wouldn't win if not the king maneuver. Like that. That makes the b7 pawn a weakness and the object of the attack. What do you think about that? Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Well, so what does it tell us? With the fewer pieces on the board, when the king is not the object of the attack, it makes sense to use the activity of this king and either move to the center to play on both sides or move to that side where a place of action is likely to be. Here, the pawns are not protected by anything else, so you can bring the king to add more pressure, and once you chase the knight away, bishop f3 can support your attack of the b7 pawn. So why do you need my chess ID? So you can use, you can send me a message on chess.com, so I can send you my chess.com account. I mainly use chess.com. Lichess I use only for the lessons. So this is my chess.com account. Actually, guys, if you didn't friend me, you can do it. Let's continue with our next example. What do we have in this position? So white seems to be better, even despite of the pawn structure being weakened.
He could place some. He had a bishop that could go to b3. Everything would be protected in the queen side, like the pawns.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so the pawns are protected. Bishop a3 can be played. But bishop a3 now means they can escape either to c3, which is quite risky, or just to b6 and then back. Also, I'm not sure if they can take on a4. Maybe they can. Okay, Brian, it's too early. Queen h4, queen h4. Well, maybe queen h4 makes sense. Okay, anyway, so black pieces are restricted. Let's just play the position. For a moment, let's forget about the topic of our workshop, which is the king's activity. What we can do, this bishop is restricted. There are weaknesses. These dark squares near the king are weak. We can also use g5 to operate with our pieces. This pawn supports our attack. Our queen isn't in a danger. I don't think they can undermine with f6. It all leads to weaknesses. Put the rook to the open file. Yes, at least you can do so. Why this move is required? It stops bishop d7 and bishop c6. That's the idea. Bishop d2 right away allows the queen to escape. So bishop g5 makes sense, I agree. So I would play so, but later. Queen c5 was played, and white decided to gain the tempo on this queen, but on the next move. First, queen h4. So queen h4 hangs the pawn, but if they take the pawn, what happens?
If they take pawn, can we do bishop e3 or maybe knight g5?
Knight g5, h5. So, but if bishop a5, we can play bishop e3 or bishop a3. So let's say bishop a3, the queen has to move, and the queen cannot move and keep this bishop protected, so they're gonna lose it. No, well, rook d8 was interesting, but I'm not sure if it works. They can just defend it or take on d8.
After
Then,
bishop e5, right?
yeah, I see. Take, king g7. Because you, what, and then bishop a3. Maybe. Yeah, then bishop a3 actually works well. Okay, so maybe after rook d8, I have something better than this. Ah, I have this move. So you take, I take two. Well, it's not too late to trade rooks, for example, and then play bishop a3. It still works, but if The idea is the same, bishop a3. Okay, fine. So b6, why? Black needs to get his pieces to the game. So bishop b7, if not d7, then b7. Now bishop a3 with a tempo. The queen moves to g6. They want to play bishop b7 and tie the knight down to the defense of the g2 pawn. What do you think white should do then? So rook d8 this time doesn't work. Why? Because if rook d8, they play bishop b7 and connect their rooks. So rook d4 on knight g3. I don't really see the purpose. Ah, knight g5. Okay, I don't really see the purpose of rook d4 move. Why? What for? The rook goes to where? There is not much to do on f4, g4. Ah, rook h4. That's the plan. It works in case if we trade bishops there. Bishop g5, f6 works, but the bishop h6 is simpler. Maybe here you think that they can do this move. This is exactly what happened in the game, but Nigel Short prepared something for this move. Well, if they take, then knight g5 is coming, and they don't really see a way of how to defend. If they take on c4, it's a disaster. It's game over. How can they stop knight g5? Maybe defend, well, the 7th rank. No, it's a blunder. Then rook comes there, and that's it. So that's why I don't really see any defense. f6, pawn takes f6, it's losing. Maybe this is the move. Knight g5, then queen g2 mate. But if this move is played, then what do you think we can do? I'm sure Brian can find a proper move in this position.
Rook d5.
Yeah, probably you mean rook d4. Ah, no, rook d5. Okay, I thought you wanted to say rook d4, rook h4, the move you suggested before. But actually, rook d5 is interesting. So the idea is this. I'm not sure if this is checkmate, because maybe they can try to escape. Let's say what? Queen d7. Queen takes. King moves. Check.
No, it's
What?
mate. It's mate. Queen
Where?
f6. No, it's not mate. Yeah, queen f6 and knight h7.
King g8.
Oh, it's not mate.
So
Sorry.
it's not mate, and if you sacrifice the rook, then it should be mate. Otherwise, the sacrifice was unsound. Maybe there is. Maybe here you have to play what? E6, rook e6 actually, so it fails. Take. Well, okay, no, I don't see. So it's better to play rook d4. Rook d4 and rook h4, which is unstoppable. So this, and it's too late to play that to protect h7. You can already take it, which allows you to do a deadly attack. It's not checkmate yet, but it's definitely losing, and it's losing, and white achieves it with no sacrifices. However, let's go to our main moment of the game where bishop h6 was played, bishop h8. So they avoided trade. That's why probably this strategy looked better, but there is something Nigel Short prepared. What do you think? What I'm talking about? But before you answer, let's decide. After the bishop goes to h8, it means that it's no longer on g7, and the bishop no longer can do what? Once you realize it, you will quickly come up with the answer of what move you should try here.
Rook d8.
Can we try knight g5, knight
Okay, there is an idea of knight g5, and then bishop somewhere, for example, there. But how? If you play bishop g7, queen h7 is not a mate. It doesn't lead to mate. If you play bishop f8, they can take with the king and escape. So that's why it's also not winning idea. Rook a3 is available. Yes, it is. Also, don't forget that bishop b7 is a tempo move if the knight is on g5 already. So that's why it's better to play rook d8. And what does it mean? So first of all, if you did answer my question, you would say that the bishop no longer can retreat to f8. So that's why rook d8 gonna create mating threat. So for now, if let's say they ignore it, we can play knight d4, drive the queen away, and take the rook with checkmate. Or we could play this move and threaten the rook twice. But of course, they play bishop b7, connecting rooks, after which we have to do that. But we still threaten.
Wait, did you still have you still don't have queen e7?
I still have queen e7. And if, let's say, I have a few free moves, I would do
Yeah,
queen
queen e7
e7.
threatening queen f8, right? Or
Not
does
queen
that
f8.
not
Queen
work?
f8, rook f8. This, I would threaten this. This would work. How to defend? So queen e7, rook a8, rook d8. That was a threat. That's why in order to parry such a threat, they played this move, bishop g7. So now the bishop can move back to f8 and block checkmate in certain situations. So taking is interesting, but after this move, king g8, I don't see how to continue. Knight g5 looks attractive, but there is a checkmate on g2. That's why rook goes to d7, this rook. What's the purpose of this move? Who can explain? Well, it's clear that such a move creates a threat, right? We avoid the rook straight. The enemy rook is still passive on e8. And the threat is bishop takes, king takes, queen f6, queen f7, with checkmate coming. That's why they defend with this move. So a trade did happen, but how to continue the attack?
Rook d4 now.
Okay, Brian, did you want to say anything? Okay, so queen f6 is one of the suggestions. Okay, fine. Queen f6, king g8. How to continue then? Okay, I think it's too early for such a strategy. King f6, king g8, rook d4. Yes, 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 it makes sense. Well, he started with rook d4. Why didn't he play queen f6 first? Well, for example, because with rook d4, black has no moves. They have to play with this rook. They cannot do something else. While the queen is still there, it's always possible to play knight g4, which is a double attack. For example, h5, knight e6. So then what? In both cases, it's this. Queen g7 is a threat. So that's why if you can make a free move, let's do it. And your opponent has to stay and wait. Rook e8. Now queen here. King goes to g8. h4. White tries to reinforce their position. If they can play h5, h6, the game will be over. So, for example, if let's say the queen goes there, h5, the queen cannot go to e7, so there is completely no defense. And taking, because what else? h6, queen g7 is made, so if they don't take, it's over. Taking is a mistake too, because the game can Can continue with what? With rook h5, rook h4, rook h5, or is there anything else?
Can you do rook f4 and then take on g7 on f7 first with the rook and then with the
Makes sense. I agree with you. So, but if the queen is not there, maybe you can already play knight g5 and do so. Oh yeah, what about knight g5 in this position? You threaten to take on f7, which can lead to checkmate. So they can try queen c6, but this time for queen c6 we have. Well, I thought maybe just f3 actually, f3 and still rook f7. No
what
queen
if
there.
we do the same plan?
Which
Like
plan?
what if no queen no here we do knight g5.
Oh, there
Here
was knight g
5.
knight g5. He does queen c6. Okay.
What if we just take again with rook f7?
Checkmate is a threat.
Oh,
Yeah, actually, there was a nice suggestion. After this move, queen h6, and then knight g5. So it seems to work too. They must go that way, but if they go that way, we just simply take. And rook g4 is the next move. Rook g4, rook h4, and nobody can defend it. Well, there can be a queen sacrifice. Okay, fine. So h4, the only way to stop it was h5, and this is where I want you to think and suggest a plan. That is a famous game, so many of you probably remember it. Yeah, so you guys are absolutely correct. The king marches to h6. So because the black pieces are paralyzed here in the middle game, you can activate your king and let your king to participate in the mating attack. So once you bring the king to h6, there is queen g7, and there is nothing that can stop it. If queen goes to if the queen goes to c5, let's say it's knight g5, threatening to take f7, queen c6, f3, and then you take on f7. So that's why the queen has to stay there. That's why they have to play with a rook and wait until the king finally comes. So bishop here, king h6, it's over. They could try maybe this move, but it's still too late. This, take, this, and now king h6 with two checkmates. Okay, so Brian, if you have such a game, it would be great if you could share with us where you invaded the enemy camp with your king and successfully checkmated him. That is really nice example. So in the middle game, our king is usually the object of the attack, and we have to keep the king secured and maybe initiate the attack on the enemy king or come up with a different plan. But when we see that our opponent cannot bother our king's position at all, then it does make sense to use your king as an ordinary piece, even if it is a middle game. How do I utilize my king in the middle games? I usually try to bring the king closer to the center to be ready to pass the game to the end game and later take advantage of my king's position. So king h2, king g3, king f4, and nothing can be done. If there was no attack, it would make sense to bring the king to the center, trade queens, and the king would be closer. Okay, so let's continue. Yes, so we have, yeah, let's continue. We have more examples. We have this in game. Can you please tell me if you have already seen this position and what was the opening? As for the game sharing, if it's not related to the topic of the event, so today's workshop topic is the king's activity. If it's not related, then no. But if it is
No, I do
related,
not know this game.
David,
I do
what
not know the game.
you don't know? Okay, fine. Okay, I'm sure Brian had seen it before several times.
G6 maybe.
Oh, I'm asking about the opening. I'm not asking about the. So which opening is it from? Nobody remembers. No, nobody knows.
Can it be Sicilian?
When, well, quite unlikely there is a pawn on d5. It should be something with the pawn on d5, either French or Caracan. So it's actually Caracan, and I thought that you know it. Let me tell you. Okay, so let's wait a second. No, it's not Queen's Gambit declined. It's Caracan, and it was pawn of attack. Okay, we're gonna check this game a little later. Okay, I'm gonna open it later. So, okay, so what I want to say, it's actually from the Caracan defense. It should be familiar to many of you who play it. It should be familiar for you if you play pawn of attack versus Caracan. Before we continue, we can take a look at the Brian's game.
It's not a good game, but the finish was similar.
Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so black doesn't have any attack yet. Queen here, knight f3, d4, knight f1. And since that moment, black starts the attack. I take an f2 and moving the rook to the other side. Okay, that move, it's probably to get rid of a back rank weakness. Well, and interesting, why didn't they take? They always have knight. It doesn't matter. Okay. Okay. It was a trade. And how did okay, it's absolutely losing, but let me see. H4 5. Well, in this position, I don't understand why just b8 and the queen is covering g2.
Because it's 5 seconds versus 2
Okay,
seconds.
okay. So he was very low on time, and because of that, he started delivering checks. And then the king somehow goes to g2, but it's not losing. They can play knight e3 at least. Well, there is actually queen h4 checkmate. But even 93 was enough. He played that move and the game. Okay, so fine. Well, this time the white pieces were not paralyzed. White was just randomly playing because of time pressure. Okay. Okay, thanks, guys. If you have your games that are related to the topic, you are welcome to suggest. Okay, the opening. Okay, so the game that I wanted to analyze was this endgame between Lubomir Kovalik and Kenneth Rogov. It occurred from Caracan, the pawn of attack. So queen b3 with a pressure on b7, bishop takes, pawn takes, e6, queen b7, knight takes, bishop b5, check. So the only move is to take. Intermediate check, queen here. So if queen blocks, it's queen e8. That's why king e7. Now queen b5. Black wants to pass the game to the endgame because their king is in a danger. And this is how it occurs. So for those of you who want to know about that.
There was also a queen c5 intermediate check there, but there are other ways to play it.
Yeah.
This is the main line.
This is, yeah, one of the main lines of this. Okay, so, oh, really? Rogov is now a famous economist with the World Bank. I didn't know that. Thanks, Dan.
I see him on the news occasionally commenting on like international affairs. He left chess and I think he went to Harvard or something and got this degree, became a very famous economist.
Perfect. So, okay, well, the position is approximately equal. The black king is weaker than the white one, but it's the end game. This pawn is weak. However, these pawns are doubled, so it's approximately equal. Let's see what happened. Bishop e3, king e6. This is actually a very good example of the king's activity in the end game. At first, the king is the object of the attack. Well, rook c8, bringing the rook to the open file. Now the a7 is hanging, so this move. In case of trade, black can activate their rook, move the king behind the pawn, and the king is still in the center. That's why they don't take. They deliver a check and move the. They should move the bishop here, which they didn't do. That was actually a good move. King goes there, then just maybe rook e2 or something with the ideas of adding pressure there. Okay, rook d3 was played. That's okay. Rook goes there. So some prophylaxis on the other side. H5 here, white plays rook g1. It makes a lot of sense. Black doesn't want to trade because of the improvement of the white pawn structure. This move attacks the g7 and provokes g6, which means that the dark squares are now weak. And after bishop g5, the rook has to move, but luckily this rook is well placed. And in this position, rook gd1 was played, attacking d5. So what do you think you should do in this position as black?
Take the F pawn.
So why you want to take the f pawn? It seems
Wait,
that
rook e5.
rook e5,
We
bishop
have to
f4.
defend, and then rook f5.
You
Oh,
cannot play
I
it.
see.
There is a pin.
You're
So,
right.
but it doesn't mean that you guys should go through the engine, check the moves, and tell me, because that's not the point of our workshop. So I'm talking to the comments of 2600 Elo Tami. So what's the point? What do you learn when you look at the engine and then tell me your move? So actually, if you look at the engine and check the second line, it tells you you should play d4. And both moves are playable. It's just a matter of taste. No, there is a way to protect it. There is the d4 move. So d4 was quite interesting. Oh, actually, I'm going to check it with the engine right away because, well, I did analyze this game in details. There were
So
two
let's say
lines.
d4, bishop f6, king e5.
If he had more attacks, but if I do d4, can he do bishop f6?
Yes, he
Then
can.
king e6, and then bishop, let's say g7, f6 is available there. Maybe that one is better.
Well, bishop f6, then you said what? King d5?
King e6, sorry, no, king
King
e6, and
e6.
then bishop g7, f6.
They take?
Oh,
They can already take.
shit.
No, well, I want to play b4. It's a helpful move for white. Oops. b4, king bishop b6. Bishop e3. I think bishop e6 is fine, but bishop f6 allows rook e2. Bishop e3 doesn't, so bishop e3 is a little better. King goes there. Bishop d4, then you can make a pin, and this is actually not losing because of the king's activity. It still should be a draw, especially with rooks on the board. Why not king e5? In which case king e5? There was no way. Here king e5. No, maybe it's fine too. Maybe because of f4. However, I don't see how f4 helps. Yeah, maybe because of f4, king e4, f3. King takes, bishop takes. Not sure. Oops. No, that's the wrong line. So, okay, let's go back. Okay, so bishop f2 was played. d4 was good. But finally, this is a drawish position. Oh, maybe it's better to keep the king here to prevent invasion. But if
What's
the
the
rook
best way to create chances here? Like rook c4 or
for who?
for black? How do
Yes,
they create
rook
some chance?
c4. To play for a
Okay.
win with rook c4, but it's not winning.
Yeah.
However, the drawish potential is huge. Okay, so bishop f2. This is what was played. That was a trade. King goes to c6, rook goes back and threatens with this move maybe. And if you expect that, what do you think you should do? If you expect like this to chase the king away, then what's the best way? Well, actually, maybe you can tell me what can make this position slightly better for black.
Let's say I'm just looking at rook e1, seeing if it works.
So, guys, one more thing I want you to remember. When your king is in the center, trading pieces is likely to be more favorable for you because your king gets more opportunities in such a case and become much stronger than the enemy king if the enemy king is out of the place of action. With more pieces on the board, your king doesn't have such a power. Yes, it was rook e1, that's right. Well, rook c2 still could make sense, but no, there is nothing they can win. They can try like that and maybe go there, but then it's rook c7. So this king is still more active than this one. So rook takes, rook a2, bishop goes back, f4, bishop b6. So the king is very close to the rook so that it can protect the rook. And what do you think white should be doing if white wants to win? It's not winning, but cannot say that white is losing. It's approximately equal position. If white wants to win, what should he do? Or, Brian, do you mean king c2? Activate king immediately. Well, yes, activate the king.
Sorry, I see two. Yeah, I'm backwards with the board today.
So, rook e7. Well, but rook e7, rook c7. b4. So the idea, if white wants to play for a win, they should create a pass pawn on the on the queen side, where they have pawn majority. So king c2, b4, or b4, king b2, king b3. But they decided, okay, what if I ruin the pawn structure on the queen side, on the king's side by doing f5? For example, if pawn doesn't take, it's this, then there is a check and g6 is lost. If the pawn takes, then both pawns are easy targets, right? So this is how white thought. And actually, he missed a tactical strike, after which his position became worse. G takes, because what else if we don't want to lose on g6? Rook to e5, attacking it, and this is where I want you to think and find the move. Okay, so Carlos suggests to... Okay, so everyone suggests playing f6. How does f6 work? Oh, f4 is also a suggestion, but f4, bishop f4, I don't fully understand the purpose. Then you can play bishop c7. Well, rook f5 then. f6 with bishop f5. Okay, so there is a question about rapid tournaments and whether it makes sense to castle to the opposite side.
No, bishop e5 shouldn't work. Sorry.
So when you play, well, in order to make the position sharp, of course, you can castle to the other side, but that shouldn't be the main principle to use, because if in many positions castling to the opposite side makes your position extremely risky. So instead, you'd better looking for other versions or for other ways of how to sharpen the position or how to make it complicated to provide you with better winning chances. So just learn how to complicate the position instead of just cutting to the opposite side every time. So I don't recommend it. You should castle to the other side when the position allows you to castle to the other side. Okay, f6. Yes, f6. This is the move. How does it work? Well, if bishop f6, you have both rook f8 and bishop d4. Maybe bishop d4 works faster. Bishop d4. Well, there is a check, but who cares? Then they have to play this move. And this is absolutely winning position because your king participates in the game, but the enemy king completely not. So their king is cut off, and you are going to advance the pawn with the help of the king. So that's why they cannot do anything with it. If bishop f6, bishop d4, let's say they play rook f5 move, there is rook f8. And you win exchange. So let's go back. What else? Rook f8 works too, yes. Because if they take, then bishop d4. If they, well, they can try something else, but then still this move. And it still should be winning because of the king's position and the ability of the king to go to the center. Instead, the game continued with rook e6, king d5, rook takes, king e4, and it's the same, but with more pieces on the board. However, it didn't help white, and they lost the game quickly. So bishop c5, rook goes back, bishop d4. So bishop f5 can be also played, but then it's bishop f6, and the white tries to take advantage of the pin. So it's better to move the king because the king can then support the pawn. So why this move? In case of rook f1, we can now block with the bishop. So step by step, finally, the rook behind, black managed to win the game by advancing the pawn further. I don't think the rest of the game is interesting for us because at this moment they had already to sacrifice the bishop, and this is how the game ended. But let's go back to this main moment. So f6, and now they have to take on f6 or play rook e6 and then take on f6. And in both cases, the king goes to d5 and e4. So the king's activity decided the game. When there are fewer pieces left, the king plays the most important role. No, maybe not the most important role, but the king is very important. It definitely plays a significant role. And just the position of the king may allow you to win the game. That's why bringing the king for white could allow them to save the game. If their king was already on d3, that would be not losing for sure. Okay, fine. So we have one more game to go over. However, what I want to remind you is that our workshops are free. However, if you enjoy this content and you would like to support it, you can send a donation using PayPal or Wise. So let me share these links and explain how it works. So, for example, through PayPal, you just click on this button, a pop-up window appears, then you enter the amount you want to donate. It can be any amount. Click PayPal. It redirects you to enter your PayPal account, and then you send money automatically to my PayPal account. So I would appreciate any help. If you have Wise, enter Wise and just copy this link. And then the payment will be sent to me. So this is my username at Wise. What else I want you to remember? So this coming Friday, we start with a new cycle of group lessons, opening understanding for club players. We are not going to learn a certain opening. We are going to understand opening. So it doesn't matter which opening repertoire you have. Such group sessions will be helpful for you for sure. I can even share my own experience when I prepare for their opponents in the tournament and they play the opening I'm not familiar with. I'm trying to memorize the lines. I'm trying to prepare for many deviations with the engine, sometimes with the books, but it sometimes works, but sometimes not. It doesn't work if I don't understand this opening. For example, like I actually wrote a post on in my blog on chess.com where where I explained I played the game against Berlioz Zlatanovich. David, did you want to say anything?
Yes, can I just take the first time free to see if I like it or not, to see if I will continue it and then pay?
We will discuss it with you later, okay? So usually it's not a possibility because, well, actually, what you can do, guys, if you think whether this is a good choice for you or you don't really need this course, you can purchase it, you can get enrolled, and then once you decide that, okay, I don't want to participate, this is not for me, I don't like it, or I know it, then you can just ask for a money back, and there is a money back. If you, after the first lesson, say that, okay, I don't want to participate anymore, then you're gonna receive a money back. Fine. So I wrote a post about my game versus international master Berlioz Zlatanovich. He played a weird version of French defense, and I made a mistake there because I completely forgot which move I had to memorize, and we deviated, and the position was completely different from other positions that I play in French defense. So I got so confused. Luckily, he was confused too, and that's why after the first 10 moves, his position was worse. But no, I didn't manage to realize my advantage. Anyway, what this course is about? The course is about understanding openings, what to pay attention when you play the opening, how to transpose from the opening to the middle game. So this is our lesson plan. How to understand the center, how to decide which plan you should come up with based on the pawn structure, how to develop and coordinate pieces in the opening, when the move order matters, and how to play it accurately, when it's a good moment to make a breakthrough, how do you transition to the middle game, how to play if your opponent chooses just a certain setup, like, for example, a modern defense. So it's not a certain opening where every move matters, but a setup which you don't know how to deal with it. Well, this and everything else, and a lot of other helpful things will be explained. Two last lessons are practical ones. So we are mainly going to talk about your own practice, your own open repertoire, what you should do with it, how you should build it, and then we're going to do a practical workshop based on it. So these, okay, thanks, Dan. These group lessons are really good. This is, well, I also think so, but this is what Dan wrote in the chat, and I'm going to read. You will learn a lot. I've done several other classes with Victor. Really good. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, and what else I can say? It's cheap. So 12 lessons. The rate is $129. So it's like about $10 per lesson. Each lesson is 1 hour and 30 minutes. So it's less than, it's about like $8 per hour or so. Or you can pay monthly. So 3 months, each month you pay $49. This is also a possibility. If you miss a class, there is a recording, so you can catch up and watch the recording, get the PGN files, upload it to VChess, get the homework, and make it done. And if you don't understand something from the previous class, ask at the next class. So my recommendation is to participate, because I know, I see, especially from my students' games, I see that people struggle with opening. I sometimes struggle myself when I don't understand a certain opening. So this is a unique course where I'm going to help you with it, and you won't be so confused, maybe only in some rare situations. Okay, fine. So the link to get to enroll in it here. If you have any questions, you can always ask me. So I'm sure you have my contact details. Fine, let's continue with our main topic. By the way, today I'm going to send a reminder that this course starts on Friday. Let's continue with our topic, the King's activity. How we conduct the lesson? So it's a Zoom meeting. It's a Zoom meeting. It is recorded, and only participants, only those who enrolled into the course of group lessons get.
Does it start on Friday?
Yeah, only those who are enrolled gonna get the recording. When does it start on Friday? Yes, it starts in the evening for Europeans, so it's 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Well, it's gonna be 9 p.m. for Europeans, but once Europe the week after switches to the summertime, it will be 10 p.m. So it starts at 9 p.m., but later it will be 10 p.m. because we use American time to schedule our events. Okay, so there was a question I wanted to answer. I choose Queen Gambit for white, but for black, Caracan or E5 or Sicilian. Okay, what was the question? It was a question actually. Well, if you want to play for a win, yes, either Sicilian or Caracan. Well, Sicilian, it's probably underestimated. And if you play a rare line of Sicilian, you have more chances to win because very often I see that chess players don't know how to react, how to respond to rare Sicilian lines. Okay, our last example is the game, well, this one. I don't think you know these people. Okay, so if you play Sicilian, but in the middle game you don't know what to do, then you definitely should yes, either get a coach or at least get enrolled into this course or group lessons, opening understanding for club players. Fine. So this is an example of the middle game, and that was the case where both kings are weak. So first of all, I want you to think and tell me what you can do in this position for white. It's white to move. What do you think? Does white have a nice plan? Well, white would love to castle actually, but they cannot castle there, and castle to the queen side is a disaster.
What if they do the artificial castle?
Okay, so yes, King F2. Well, actually, this move was played in the game. And John also suggests castle by hand. I have a question, guys. So how is it better to say? So artificial castling or castle by hand? What is a more common way to explain it in English?
I've heard people say castle manually.
Castle manually. Castle by hand. Castle by hand. Okay, castle by hand is more common. Okay,
But
fine.
you can castle by hand even in the normal way. Why is
Okay, yes, it's funny. You can castle by hand in normal way too. Fine. Okay. So if we were about to translate it from Russian, for example, it should be artificial castling. And I also know that artificial castling, such a term exists. But if probably it's more common to say castle by hand. Okay, fine. That was what was played in the game, but King f2 is already a mistake, and later you see how Black managed to punish it. But actually, look at this king. It's a weak king too. Instead of castling, can White take advantage of the Black king's position?
It's not so easy.
True, but possible.
You want to try like f5 or something like that with try to get the queen to h6. There's no dark square bishop for black, so you can try to
Yes,
use the dark squares.
but there is no dark square bishop for White. So the
Yeah.
queen may join the attack, but who will support this queen?
it would be good if the h1 rook could maneuver to join in.
The rook, but it's hard. How? Rook f1 is always a blunder, and how else this rook can go? Rook here doesn't go neither.
So what? What if it does bishop f1, trades the bishops, and then go?
Yeah, trading bishops first.
Yes, do that.
Okay. If you want to succeed with the attack, we better use these two pieces. So g4 should be the move actually. Queen h3 and bishop f4 threatening h7. g4 also stops f5. That means that it's hard to parry bishop f4 threat. When you start the attack, you should understand because of what you're going to succeed there. If you just bring the queen into the attack and then you see that nobody else can support the queen, then probably it was a wrong plan and your maximum is a perpetual check there. But if you get at least two pieces and one of them is the queen, you have more chances. So queen a3, for example, bishop f4, queen b2, rook d1, they take the pawn, but then it's queen h3 and also rook g1 with g5 ideas. Queen h3 also is a threat. So this is how white should play. Instead, they played king f2, and this move makes their king weak. What comes to your mind? How black punished white for being so inaccurate? Okay, take your time. Please take a look at this position. So the king on f2 is the object of the attack too, but how? In order to attack it, we should somehow make the position more open, at least to let our pieces to invade the enemy territory. How should it be done? Okay, with e5. But if you play e5, how it makes the position open? It's very likely to lead to a perpetual check, or you can even lose. So how to do this? Queen takes e5. Yeah, queen takes e5 at least. And I want to do this. Maybe the h pawn move. If the rook was on h8 or g8, I would agree. But even if, let's say, you do so, and then you take on g3, h takes g3, so you may create more problems to your own king. Okay, so the answer is rook takes d4. With such a move, you make the position more open. Queen takes d4 and rook d8. And the best choice for white in such a case is to trade their queen for two rooks by doing this sacrifice. So rook hd1, queen a5, let's say, rook dc1, e5, and well, queen e2, queen b5, queen e2.
Why couldn't white take the c6 pawn?
They can, but it's risky. So, well, what can I say? Even here, it's you can play queen c7, but then it's rook d6, so queen a5 is better. What can I say? That when the queen is better than two rooks, when the king is weak. So here we have queen and pawn versus two rooks. The queen should be stronger than these two because of the king's position. The game, they played this move, and black immediately reacted with rook d3. And once again, it was better to sacrifice right away and then try to defend c5. However, it's still losing. Bishop f5, bishop f1, queen a3. And the king's position is vulnerable. Also, e5 may make it more open, and white gonna struggle. Instead, it was rook hc1, so hoping to hide the king to g1. Rook takes a3, king takes a3. Now your turn. What would you suggest? Queen b5. Queen b5 is interesting. What I don't like about this move is bishop f1. But keep this idea in mind, it will help you. e5, right, e5, open the position even more. So they decided to take on c6. Queen goes there, threatening with queen d4. If, let's say, rook d1 in this position, queen c7 and rook d6, it seems that white achieved a lot, but in fact, they are losing. Can you explain because of what they are losing?
Do bishop to b5.
Either bishop, huh?
Bishop to b7 or bishop to b5.
Yeah, bishop to b7 or bishop to b5. For example, this, and if they take it, queen c5 with a fork. And if not, then we just win the bishop. So that's why after this move, they decided to escape, but the game was already over. King here. Okay, so probably just one move is required to declare black is winning. Which move?
Bishop d3,
What's the purpose of bishop d3?
setting up multiple threats. Bishop pawn to e4.
Okay.
Even mate.
Okay, fine. But Brian,
Queen a3 with bishop e4 there.
Yeah, but it's not mate. So queen e3, bishop e4, there will be a bishop straight. So I see what you want, but you can, if you can play e4 without bishop d3, you'd better play so.
Yeah, of course.
So
can.
you don't really need this move. The pawn is poisoned. If they take it,
And just
you
fork the bishop.
yeah.
Not the- Is Gelfer Israel the player from Israel?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Okay, so e4, and what they can do, so almost nothing. They can try this, attacking it twice, but then bishop e2, and then the pawn is still poisoned. So king g2, you take with a check, and then you unpin. They cannot even come closer because you can do this. And then deliver maybe something like that. So yeah, this is how the game ended with queen e4. Well, after e4, that was completely losing. So what I wanted to say here, well, in the opening and the middle game, we try to secure the king and take advantage of the enemy king's position. So the king isn't so strong then, only occasionally when, for example, the enemy pieces are paralyzed or they are too far from our king. And if in the middle game we are trying to use the king, we usually bring the king closer to the center, like this, king f1, king e2. It's quite rare when we can do such maneuver safely. Usually our king becomes a target if we do so. But of course, you shouldn't forget about such resources, especially when you see that you can do everything you want, but your opponent can hardly do anything. In the end game, the king is a very important piece and maybe even as strong as the rook. For example, in this situation, it seems that white equalizes, but with the king on the e4, their position is completely losing due to the passed pawn supported with the king, while the enemy king is completely useless. If only that king was somewhere close, that would be a completely different situation. Okay, so try to remember when it makes sense to secure the king and when it makes sense to activate your king, and closer to the end game, try to keep your king in the center. Here, white tried to secure the king by doing castle by hand. However, they just blunder it or underestimated these consequences. Yes, in the end game, the king is approximately as strong as a rook. Okay, fine, guys. Thank you for joining. Please do not forget that we have our opening understanding group course starting this Sunday already. And those of you who participated in the previous courses, I'm sure would like to join again because you asked me many times. So this is the link for you again. Please join. I'm sure you won't regret. If you have any questions regarding it, you can always message me at tricksofchess@gmail.com. So if anything needed, just let me know. And thank you for coming. And of course, there will be a workshop next Sunday. I will announce it during the week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.